The Methodist Church Ghana, in collaboration with World Health Organization, has marked the World Health Day for this year under the theme, Depression, Let's Talk. As part of the activities to mark the day, the Health Directorate of the Methodist Church Ghana embarked on a float through some principal streets of Accra, from Dansoman to Accra Central.
This is a day that WHO organizes to create awareness on topics that are of great importance to the entire world. This year, the theme is on depression. And depression, as somebody has put it, is the common cold of mental health. And then depression is also the second leading cause of death among youth in terms of suicide. And therefore, we all suffer one way or the other from moods that are very low. But that is different from when we say that somebody is clinically depressed. When we say that you are clinically depressed, then there's supposed to be certain signs and symptoms that goes with a certain period of time and certain actions that you are unable to do. Anytime that you feel low, talk to someone. Talk to your pastor, talk to your teacher, talk to your trusted friend, talk to your parents, talk to your co-worker, because that is how you'll be able to come out of the depression. Whatever your circumstance, talk to somebody so that you'll be able to share your concerns, and then you can get out of your depressive and the stress state that we find ourselves.
During the float, people were randomly interviewed on the streets to assess the public awareness and responsiveness to depression.
Suicide, yeah, I'm saying, President, Juma Sam, and some like be on this conversion, be on Swa, Nukuano, some like Nyama Bebre, and say on your Juma, no, yeah, Juma, some like over to me, on to me, yes, Obekunu. Na say ni bibia akoso ye wo ni wara ni marriage mu a onko ni hu sa sa ban onhwe ni amaso na on pa adwuma mo bia say adwuma bia na e be say fa so wo so a na hanu a it's okay.
We the relatives and then the loved ones around people who want to commit suicide or people who think they are depressed, we are to let them know we have listening ears, and then we will listen to whatever they want to say. And I think if we give them our ears, they will confide in us and tell us what is actually wrong with them, and then we will know whether to advise them or to get them closer to us so that they will not commit that suicide.
Flyers with information on depression were distributed and placards were showcased to intensify awareness on depression. The World Health Day celebration continued with a symposium at the Civil Service Association Auditorium. The presiding bishop of the Methodist Church Ghana, who was represented by the Bishop of Accra Diocese, the Right Reverend Samuel Kofi Osabute, said research showed that Ghana recorded 18 cases of reported suicide between January and March 2017. He charged pastors, teachers, and other professionals to gain knowledge in depression in order to assist students, church members, and victims of depression.
The only thing we can do is to help people. When we say counseling, counseling is not advice giving. Counseling is initiating conversations with those we find prone to depression that leads to suicide. So counseling is not just about going to give people advice. Again, as we counsel those who may find themselves in that situation, we also deliberately teach people about life situations, about the things that have more value than the things, the materialism that they are chasing and the academic pursuits that they are chasing. So we have also education, and we have been doing this education all the time, which we are going to intensify now that things are on the increase. We have been doing this education through our weekly Bible studies and lessons that we have in the church all the time. Well, I wouldn't say the church has done enough. The church could still do better, in terms of more people to be trained in what we call mental health care. And that is what we are going to pursue.
That's all for the World Health Day celebration. Up next is a panel discussion on the theme, Depression, Let's Talk.
Welcome viewers to the Kingdom Come program, a program by Methodist Church Ghana to deepen our understanding of the scriptures and social actions. I am your host, Dinah Ba Odu. Today's topic, we are continuing with what we did last week, and the topic is on depression. We also highlight more on suicide because there's been a lot of suicide cases, reported cases of suicide in Ghana recently. With me are Very Reverend Paul Edu Jr. of the Methodist Church Ghana and Mr. Alfred Notedua of Medical School as clinical psychologist. Mr. Notedua, can you tell us some of the symptoms or cues that people give to let us know or suspect that they are contemplating suicide or they have thoughts of dying?
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for having me again this week. Let me just clarify something. Suicide is related to depression, as we've explained last week, but not all suicides are caused by depression. We've mentioned multiple causative factors, and sometimes people may act on the spur of the moment due to the kind of distress they are experiencing at a particular point in time. So we are not suggesting that everybody who commits suicide or attempts suicide or thinks about suicide must necessarily fit the diagnosis of depression, right? So mental illnesses are one of the possible triggers or pathways that may lead to suicide. The other thing I want to clearly emphasize is that when we talk of signs, symptoms, they are not automatic and they do not apply to everybody. Some may give no sign. Indeed, for some, their predicament came onto them as a rush, a flood, and within no time they felt overwhelmed, hopeless, and in despair. And therefore, they did something, right? But sometimes we get people who run a theme through their conversations, sometimes even on social media and other things. They are saying things which suggest that they are tired. They've given up. Life is unbearable or difficult, and they see no hope in sight. That could be a cue. There are people who start putting their things in order, right? Some may now want to solve some problems or mend some broken bridges in relationships and friendships. Others may start the processes of even putting their property or their estate together, or even formally now want to write a will. Though we have situations where people write a will because they are advanced in age and they are putting their house in order as well. This is why I say it is not conclusive. Right? Sometimes we notice changes in behavior. For all of us, there are people who are close to us, and they, better than any psychologist, will know when you've changed or you've drawn or you've become a bit different. Okay? So these are the kinds of things. Sometimes also we see in a complex pattern where there's substance use or there's means to harm or self-harm, right? People who have access to knives, chemicals, guns, weapons, etc., who may be experiencing these things, are more likely to use or grasp these things to facilitate it. So means, the thoughts, the kind of behavioral changes are all possible indicators. Some may leave hints. Indeed, sometimes we say suicide is a cry for attention, for help. Let me hit again emphatically that suicide ultimately is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Invariably, when a person fails and you sit with them and they are in a position to reason and rationalize a bit better, they will tell you, I do not want to die. But at that point in time, that seemed the only option. I had the case of a bank worker who had worked with the bank for about 19 years, and he made a mistake, which would have lost the bank some money. But he identified his mistake and alerted his supervisors, and nothing was lost. So he made a mistake, he saw it, but the bank gave him the option of resigning or being sacked. Now, you can see how this would hurt. Okay? This is not somebody who was depressed before. This is not somebody who meets my criteria as mentioned in last week's program. So he had to take the option and technically resign. Literally jump before he was pushed. Now he goes home and he's unable to muster the courage and tell his wife what has happened and tell his 2 children. So for a period of time, he was leaving home in the morning, getting dressed, leaving home, pretending he was working. For about 2 weeks, until he realized he couldn't bear it anymore. And rather than face the pain, the shame, the embarrassment that in a way I caused my own predicament, he attempted something. Now, the important instructive thing in this is that when he presented before me for, post-attempt help and support, he looked at me and said, Note, I did psychology in Legono. But at that time, at that point, I couldn't bear it. I'm using this to illustrate and indicate to people that we are human, and sometimes the weight does become unbearable. And different features of our personality and our coping will help us. There's somebody who has friends, and I mean real friends. There's somebody who has friends, plenty, but he doesn't count one of them as a friend. So in need, they are restricted. And the weight and the pressure, if you know the formula for pressure, area times or something squared, right? So if the area is small, the pressure is higher. It's only me, only I know. So this is why I say these signs and symptoms are helpful and they are a guide, but they are not automatic. What will help us is being closer and truer to our friends, our relationships, our colleagues, and so on, right? And be able to talk genuinely and legitimately, not only about good times, but when we experience difficulty as well.
So, people who commit suicide it's not all of them who are depressed. Some because of other pressures or flood of problems.
Definitely.
They may think of suicide or may commit suicide. But then the majority of people who commit suicide are depressed. Is that not?
You see, you are making a post facto deduction. The person has committed. He or she is gone. But now we start to trace, or throw a letter away, or say, so they were depressed. It is not conclusive, right? It may be likely, but that doesn't make, you see, correlation doesn't mean causation. But we tend to think that way. Listen, this bank case I just gave is the same as somebody who's just suddenly found out that they are pregnant. They've been in, let's say, in an incestuous relationship or an illegitimate relationship, but it has continued. But the pregnancy was the trigger. Now I will be exposed. That exposure is enough to tip me over the edge. Did I meet Norte's criteria or the criteria for diagnosis? It's not Norte's criteria, but in the sense that I've explained it, right? I did not, you see. But now I am facing the revelation, okay? And I'm sure Reverend will share with us. Men and women of the faith, ministers of the faith, are not exempt. No. There are those who find that there's something happening in the church and it is about to be revealed or disclosed, or I have transgressed. Reverend mentioned there's hope in focusing on scripture and the good Lord and all these things, but I mentioned hopelessness. When a person is hopeless, those things are redundant, inactive at a certain point. We need to help a person, right, get to a certain point where they now believe that is indeed hope.
But let
Yes.
me come. You know, as Ghanaians, our social support system
That's right.
has been dwindling. People can, you live in a family where everybody is there. You can go to this person, unburden yourself. But now the social system, support system is getting out. Here in Accra, we live in a nuclear family.
Yeah.
Each one to himself and God for us all. You get out of your house straight to your job, from your office straight to your house. And I want to believe that those days when families live together, you find our parents, our elder brothers or siblings helping us out so that you can have somebody you can confide in.
Yeah.
Now, that thing is no more there. These days, you find a lot of people living as individuals. He drives straight to the office, and then he even goes to the office, and there's a problem in the office, and there's nobody to look up to. But I want to also say this, that as Ghanaians, and I don't want to use any example, but where you made mention of the fact that in some hospitals there are chaplains. I even heard that in some hospitals there are social workers. People who
They've always
been there.
Yeah.
Good. So that these facilities that we have should be expanded, so that others can have access to. If even I'm an individual, I don't have a pastor, I can have a counselor, I can have somebody I can unburden myself to. But like I was discussing with you before we came over here, that you find a lot of people taking alcohol. But I don't think taking alcohol will be the solution. You are drowning yourself in it. But when you finish with the alcohol, you wake up. And then you said it. That you wake up one morning and then you know that the problem, your giant will be sitting over there waiting for you. So I would want to say this, that our social support system as a nation, as Ghanaians, we should go back to those things that helped us. Because when you were in trouble, you find your auntie helping you. My mother died very early, but I had my aunties helping us out. I had my uncles helping us out. But these days, the uncles and the aunties, they're all thinking about themselves. And we don't have these facilities available. So that the tendency to commit suicide will be there if you don't have any hope, any help. But then the church is also available. But we need to pay more attention, not on the deliverance sessions always, but to pay attention to individuals who have their problems.
Actual lives.
There are a lot of individuals within the church who have problems, but you see, the emphasis now is on deliverance and those things. Like I said, Dr. Luke was there. And if you look through the Gospel of Luke, most of the healings and the rest were recorded by Dr. Luke. And I believe that God intentionally asked Dr. Luke to be part and parcel of those who wrote the gospel message for us. Let us rely on these, our Ghanaian basic cultural tendencies that we have in helping ourselves. The support system. And if the support system is not there and he hasn't got anybody to talk to, definitely the only option you said will be to commit suicide. But I don't think suicidal tendencies should be encouraged here.
Mr. Note, last week you talked about some of the warning signs. You mentioned social media. Can you please reinforce that? Tell us more about the signs or the warning signs that people give.
Okay. What they say about themselves, what they post about themselves, sometimes even certain basic positions they now take on life issues, right? Sometimes there's somebody who's really very balanced and calm, but you see them on social media getting very fanatical or agitated on an issue. Sometimes in a group you say, so and so left. It means they are not coping. Social media is good, but I have a presentation where I call it and I term it social murder, because it takes away the very structures Reverend is talking about. If I want to enter your room, Dinah, I knock, kokoko, or I go, say, Amen, right? Social media, I'm in your house. Where are you in your house? What are you wearing? And all these things. And people reflect who they are on social media. If you're a gossip in real life, you're a gossip on Facebook. If you are bitter in real life, you're bitter on WhatsApp, on Facebook. So it's a replication of what we have in society, right? And therefore, somebody may be expressing their depression or their bitterness or emptiness on social media. We need to be able to pick some of these up. Some of these suicide bombers, especially in the other parts of the world, quickly they reconstruct their Facebook pages and they realize this man has been saying certain things all along, right? So there are things we can, with adolescents and youth, sometimes I tell parents, do you know which sites he's on? Do you know which groups he's in? Because you can have a boy living in Adrabaka and he's being socialized in Massachusetts by somebody outside. So let's start understanding these things. And they may raise issues. Somebody has switched and now takes substances. Somebody you knew who never used to drink. Now he or she is drinking. But you decide, they have advanced. They've arrived. Okay? It's a significant change in the way they are. Follow up. Question. Ask. Dinah, you didn't used to be like this, so I didn't like going here. Now, suddenly, these are the places you go to, and it could be something that gives us insights to a person's situation. Right? It may not necessarily portend suicide, but at least we're getting closer to more meaningful relationships.
So we have to listen to what our friends say to us, or people, family members, even parents, what they say. We have to take them serious. What they write on their blogs, what they write on their WhatsApp. If we take them serious, we may see the warning signs.
Even a person's DP and the message under the DP, display picture, will tell you something.
So viewers, we've heard that we can help people by noting some of these things, and then we can support them to change the way they think. We shall go on short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with this all-important topic. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers. This is Thy Kingdom Come program, a program by the Methodist Church Ghana to deepen our understanding of scriptures and how to live right for God. I am your host, Diana Ba Odum. Mr. Due, what can be done to curb suicide in Ghana? After that, Reverend will also tell us what the church can do to help curb suicide.
Okay. Let me start by saying that our whole posturing and attitude on suicide or even mental health issues need to change drastically. So when you hear commit suicide, commit, it suggests a crime or wrongdoing. This is a known human challenge, okay? Are we dealing with a person in distress or a criminal mind? So what we're telling people out there is that if you try it and you fail, we'll be waiting for you and we'll lock you up. So we are actually pushing people in distress to do better, to do their homework and make sure at least they don't suffer the double agony of having failed and then being incarcerated. So we are fighting for a repeal of that section. That's one thing. But us as society, not the legislature, we have harsh traditional sanctions for the body and sometimes even for the family of a person who commits suicide. Let's reconstruct those things. You cannot be buried this way or that way on this day or even not in our town and so on. This is not a law. This is our tradition. But both are man-made. Man-made. So man cannot make them to make people a bit more comfortable. Then, like we're doing here, Dinah and Reverend, we are having a legitimate, non-judgmental discussion about some of the challenges that may lead to suicide. So we haven't judged any person that, oh, this was too foolish. Wake it to her. We're not judging. We're saying it is a known predicament. Draw closer and let us help you unravel. Let us help you think straight, feel straight, so that you can continue with the daily challenges of life and living. Some people may need medication, a lot of people may not. Some people may have something even more complicated. We have bipolar disorder, which is also a mood disorder. We have schizophrenia. We have other things, right, that may rightfully, justifiably need treatment. So, what do we need to do? The structures that give those types of treatment and interventions, let's strengthen them. Let's make sure it's available. It's not enough to say mental health is free and leave it in a deplorable state. So let's do all these things. And like Reverend said, I love that. Let's partner with the different arms of society and institutions of society and build capacity. Yes, I can rely on scripture and faith to help somebody, but it gets to a point I need a top-up or a referral line that I can use. If we create these things in churches, schools, institutions, I believe we can prevent and lower suicide. Unfortunately and sadly, no society is free of suicide, even in America and other places where they have 911 and you can call and they say in a zap they will be there. So let's be sure we are helping people and making sure we can recognize these things early and get in there. I believe by doing that, we can prevent it largely.
Well, the criminalizing suicidal sentence is very good. But from my point of view, Jesus says something in Matthew 11:28. He says, "Come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Rest is putting our faith in Him to really help us out. And now there's one example. It's about the prodigal son. He took his father's wealth, his portion, and then left. Led that frivolous life. And when at the end of the day he realized that he wasn't making up, he didn't commit suicide. He told himself, in my father's house, even the hired laborers, when they are paid and they are going home, they are given extra food. So why do I sit here and eat the chaff? And I like what Jesus said over there. And the boy told himself, when he came back to his senses, he decided to go back. It's our duty as a church to enable our church members who have these suicidal to come back to their senses. I believe God is a God of second chance. We can live in spite of the difficulties and the problems. There's another story. When Peter and Jesus and co were in a boat and Jesus was lying there sleeping and the storm was there. We're not saying there won't be storms. The storms will come. We sing it. The storm may roll around us. They were in the storm. Jesus was a carpenter. I will put it that way. But the fishermen did their best, and then they told themselves, why don't we go back to Jesus? And then Peter, carest thou that will perish. And when Jesus stood up, he spoke to the wind. He spoke to the water. And so I would want to believe that the church is there to enable us to overcome our storms and our difficulties and our challenges. After all, Psalm 34, verse 19 says, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers the righteous from them all. It depends on the approach. It depends really on the approach. So that if you can combine the two, taking your medication, then going to the priest or whoever to advise you. But then I also want to warn. There are a lot of people out there who are serving as counselors who are not trained. And they may give the wrong advice. So I want to warn members that if it is possible, go to your minister. And as a Methodist, I want to encourage our members to get that confidence in our priests and our pastors and our ministers. You go there and then speak to the person. And I believe that as you go in there, he will pray with you, he would talk to you, he would counsel you. There was this woman whose husband was a drunkard. And then he was, I will mention the church, an Anglican. He went to the Anglican priest. And the priest asked her, what is it that your husband likes most? So he likes flowers. To go buy a very beautiful flower, put it in front of the door where he would enter. Fortunately, the man that normally he would come around 3 a.m., but fortunately that day he came 6 p.m. And the moment he saw the flowers, he was going for that. Because he was drunk, he hit the flowers, it fell, and he felt the wife was going to ransack him with insults. The woman didn't do that. He swept the dirt, took the flowers away, sent the man to the washroom, had him cleansed, sent him to the table, and for the first time, the man was eating soft fufu with a very good soup. And the end of it was that the woman had not entered the man's room for so long. That day, the woman slept in the man's room, and that soap problem was solved. So I would want to believe that let us help our members as ministers with the Word of God, with the needed encouragement, with the spiritual environment. And when we do that, I think we also help them come out of their difficulties.
Okay. We are talking about depression. There's one important question about depression. When we are talking about some of the things that people feel or how people feel, you mentioned hopelessness, you also mentioned guilt feelings. And we know that some people, when they feel guilty, they talk and talk. And we have a lot of old people and even young people who begin to talk and say things because they feel guilty for whatever reason they themselves don't know. And we brand them as witches. Mr. Notebia, what can you say about that? Because we even have witch camps and it's full of depressed people, I suppose.
It's important that we, as Plato said, examine our lives. The unexamined life is not worth living, right? So there are things we set up as traditional rules, taboos, whatever, and now they don't serve the purpose. So they make us judgmental, they make us stigmatized, they make us discriminate, and we need to start looking at them. Now, when a person starts expressing guilt, decreased or lowered self-esteem or self-worth, you see, your self-esteem is about much more than today. You see, your self-esteem is your overall pink sheet of who you are and what you amount to. And so that's not just about what you're wearing today and whether somebody says you're looking nice. So some of us, over time, and our experiences have acquired this unhealthy self-esteem. So we are defensive, we are fragile, we are vulnerable, and so many of the entrapments in life will catch us. Do you see? So again, like we've been saying, let's do this social re-engineering. Let's have people who have connections with people and groups that are meaningful and that would quickly identify when something is wrong. So when you say you feel guilty about this or that, sometimes you say, I feel I've disappointed my father. It may not mean you are ill, right? But maybe somebody has passed a certain harsh comment or feedback in a family context, which has stung you, right? It's that fabric which will help you address it. But if the family is already dysfunctional and the relationships are already fragile, you will never be able to, oh, Uncle Joe, do you see? You'll never be able to address it. And over time, you internalize it as this negativity. And then if you are elderly, then it becomes a problem. Quick word with the elderly. When you are advanced in age, you do a review. You don't need to be an accountant. You review your life, your children, what you've done, what you've been able to achieve. And there's this sense of running out of time. So where that sheet doesn't look positive to you, there are tendencies for you to get depressed and some of these things come in. Same with people with long-term illnesses. In other parts of the world, they are routinely screened for these things. And it doesn't mean you are going mad. It's just a precaution we take knowing that it's a likely or possible outcome. So let's be doing some of these things and not pushing people into camps and stigmatizing them and making them feel bad. It just makes the problem worse.
So viewers, so if you have an old woman in your house, most of the time they are old women, they have assessed their lives. Sometimes they feel bad that they didn't help their children the way they could have done. From hindsight, these people may be saying things and we think they are confessing their sins. They may be depressed. Some of them may have suicidal ideas that they have to kill themselves. We have to help them manage whatever feeling they have or mood they have rather than push them into depression. Viewers, we've talked about depression and suicide. I hope we have heard a lot, we've learned a lot. If you are depressed, you can go and see any health worker, especially a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a psychiatric nurse, even a social worker, they've been trained. And then if you have your minister, you can go to your minister to discuss your feelings rather than think, let's bottle up or keep all these things in you because it will eat you up. If you want to go and see a counselor, ask the counselor whether he's registered with the Ghana Psychology Council. That is the only way you will know whether the person is a charlatan or not. So the topic is depression. Let's talk. And the program is Thy Kingdom Come. Viewers, the panelists are Very Reverend Paul Edu Jr. of the Methodist Church Ghana and Mr. Alfred Note Duya of Ghana Medical School. I guess most people don't know he's Alfred. I call him Alfred. Thank you very much for viewing and have a wonderful evening.